Listen, y'all better buckle up. This is about to be an incredible conversation with my man, Rafael Nunez. And I'm going to tell you right now, the energy and excitement, the electricity that's inside of this conversation is like no other conversation that's ever been on the show. I'm so excited for you guys to dive in to get some interesting perspectives and details from this incredible cybersecurity mind, sharing from his background of being a veteran, transitioning into cyber from the military, and all the things that are in between. So if you haven't already, feel free to go ahead and down below, subscribe to the show, and make sure you hit that bell icon so that you don't miss out on any other of these fire conversations like you're about to listen to right now, as well as go ahead and smash that like button if you are a fan of the show in itself. So with that, let's cut to the intro. Let's get it done. What up? What up? Eddie Thompson here, guys, with the Simply Secure podcast. Back again, sharing some incredible guests with you guys to learn a little bit more about the cybersecurity industry. This time, I have an incredible individual that I met, honestly, through LinkedIn. Love his passion, love his excitement, and his genuine want to help other people succeed within this space, but also just in life in general. So before I start, fan loving a little bit too much, I'm gonna have the guest go ahead and introduce himself, and then at the end of that, let us know what you're excited about, Rafi.
100%. Thanks for having me, Eddie. It's quite a pleasure. Rafael Nunez, currently a senior solution architect, been doing cybersecurity for close to 20 years. Started back in the Air Force, DoD contracting, civil service, retail, professional services, and now I work for Sirius, a CDW company.
That's awesome. That's perfect. And that's actually, let's start right there, Rafael. Let's think about your career in cyber. Like you said, you've been here for 2 decades now, right? So
Yes,
you got
sir.
a lot of accumulated knowledge of things that you did. But take us back to year one. How did you get into cyber? Was it something that you felt as though you always wanted to do? Did you stumble into it? What's that background? I love to give the people a good origin story.
Absolutely. Yeah, man. It's interesting. I've been doing cyber since before it was called cyber. It was information security, right? And then we coined this term cyber. And originally started in the Air Force as a general IT guy, managing a help desk. I was made the NCO in charge, which means non-commissioned officer in charge of the help desk.
Wow.
I had zero experience. I was about 22 at the time, and my entire team were folks that grew up with a computer in their hands, right? I didn't
Mm,
own a computer till I was in my 20s at least. So
wow.
here I am leading a team of folks that are smart, way smarter than me. So I had to subscribe to the Steve Jobs, right? Hire smart people and then get out of their way, sort of thing. In that endeavor, learned a lot. I mean, the help desk is such a good training ground for anyone, right? The exposure, the variance of calls that you get in from anywhere from a printer, from somebody that can't VPN. I had a chance to apply for a special duty assignment that involved certification and accreditation of systems, dealing with secret information, and that was my first introduction into call it the cybersecurity triad, right? Confidentiality, integrity, and availability, and the rest I just
Mm,
built upon, and eventually got certified. I thought I was going to make a career out of it, but 10 years into the Air Force, I had too many deployments in the desert. I was always of the mindset to tell people, if you don't want to deploy, get out. That's what we're here for. So then I had to look at myself in the mirror and say, get out. I had just missed the birth of my daughter when I was in my last deployment in Iraq.
mm.
I took my CSSP, I passed, and took my first contracting gig, and that was 12 years ago.
Wow, that's awesome, man. You had a couple of different points in there that I would love to just dive a little bit deeper into. The first one I'm going to come back to is the thought of when you transitioned into this information security was what it was 20 years ago, right? And you said you were in charge of a team that was much smarter than you, right? So two
Yes.
things come up, two questions that I want you to kind of dive a little bit deeper into. One, what do you think set you apart that allowed you to get that position, right? Because like you said, those people were smarter than you, so why technically did you get the position over them? And then secondly, what did you have to do maybe mentally, mindset wise to prepare yourself to lead that team effectively despite you being younger and maybe less smart from a technical sense than the people that you were managing?
That's a good question. I learned a lot. At first, I was taunted by a cloud of self-doubt. I mean, can you imagine these kids are speaking in the languages and terminology that, and I'm supposed to be their leader, right? So it taught me quite a few things. We all bring something to the table, and the one thing that you may believe that you're deficient at, that somebody else excels at, it isn't your only quality, isn't the only thing you're being evaluated for, right? So
Hmm.
I was a little older. I had been leading people in the civilian sector before joining the military. So I knew I could provide guidance, right? There was a lot of smarts, a lot of wits, but it wasn't organized, right? So I needed to be able to harness that power, that knowledge. How can we be better for our customers? How can we respond more diligently, right? So I brought that kind of rigor to the table, such as like when you take a call from the help desk, it only becomes a ticket if you can't troubleshoot on the spot. But oh, by the way, the moment you answer the phone, you're creating that ticket and remedy, right? So it shouldn't
Hmm.
be just a generic exercise. What's your name? How may I help you today? What's your name? Good. I'm typing it in. So, but if I can't resolve your problem on the spot, I can just hit save and the ticket is created and it moves on to the next queue. Things like that, right? Things to that effect. Um, developing metrics and documenting processes so that things wouldn't die when somebody left and transitioned, building continuity. Um, but it wasn't. I mean, it sounds good now, but it wasn't always easy, man. We had a unit compliance inspection coming up, and this one kid who was the web guy, the web developer. All of a sudden, I say, yeah, so you're in charge of this. You got to make sure all the broken links are working and everything, right?
Yep.
This is on a Friday. It comes back on a Monday, and I'm like, hey, how far did you get? He's like, I'm done. He's like, I converted everything from HTML to ASP. Like, what does that even mean, right? And he had single handedly just pulled all nighters over the weekend for fun, just to tell me that he had done everything that would have taken maybe a month over a weekend to make
Wow.
sure the websites were good, in our intranet. So yeah,
That's incredible. That is absolutely incredible. That's, it's funny because I'm seeing from these conversations that I've been having, there's a lot of cybersecurity professionals who they just have that extra ambition, right? Like they're so intrigued by what they do that they don't mind doing it way after their 9 to 5 slot, right? Like they just keep working until the project's done. Like they rather have it be done compared to just having it sit and them stopping and coming back to it. Would you say that's really the case?
I agreed. And I can tell you that that ambition, that hunger, I had to develop that because I felt like I needed to catch up. So I started running, right? I felt like I had so much catching up to do that before I knew it, I had surpassed some of these kids that I looked up to as being more technically proficient than I was.
Hmm.
And I hadn't really realized it. I was still rating myself down here, right?
Hmm.
And I always tell people I haven't stopped running since.
Yeah.
So it's interestingly enough, people that feel like make statements like my brain's not wired that way. I'll never get to that level. I won't
Hmm.
be, I'll never be a hacker. I'll never be a threat hunter. You'd be surprised. You've already harnessed a bunch of skills that the IT guru has yet to tap into. So
Hmm.
now your passion, you're harnessing something on top of something. You're coming over from a different career field. You've made it other places. You've led teams, so you're stronger for it. It's like speaking a second language. At
Hmm.
first, it's demoralizing. You get to that country and you don't speak that second language, and you're like, oh my God, I have to start over, kind of thing. But ultimately, who are you at the end of that? Now you speak two languages and you're ahead of that entire community, right? And the world opens up to you. So people should really be a little nicer on themselves when it comes to comparing somebody's chapter 30 to their own chapter one.
Yeah. It's funny. I would love to spend a little bit more time there too. If you want to dive deeper into when do you feel like that shift happened mentally, right? Because like you just mentioned, you felt like you surpassed them from a technological sense, but you didn't know it. You were still rating yourself down here compared to like what those people know. I'm just curious, was there like a light bulb moment where something went off and you were like, man, like I'm actually on level, right? Either, I'm on the same playing field as these guys now, not necessarily a step below. Was there, a moment where you felt like, man, like this hit me and this just made sense, it clicked in my mind?
I like this question because there actually was a moment. I was head down. I mean, there was some good feedback and things were going well at the help desk.
Mhm.
But upon me letting them know that I was PCSing, having to change a station, going somewhere else, leaving after 3.5 years there,
Mhm.
um, one of my senior analysts came up to me, tapped me on the shoulder. It was we were having a little shindig, a little going away, and taps me on the shoulder and says, "Man, Sergeant Nunez, we're losing one of our most technical resources." And to this day, I get goosebumps because I hadn't. I'm like, "Are you kidding me? I look at you like a network wizard, and you're looking at me like one of our most like I became that guy, right?
Yeah,
Obviously, we
yeah,
still have a lot to learn, but that was cemented. Like, wow, I've still been rating myself and counting myself out in these
mhm.
conversations, and I guess I'm now have a seat at the table.
Absolutely, man. It's funny how sometimes somebody else's validation or somebody else's compliment, I wouldn't say it's a validation, but somebody else's compliment allows us to validate ourselves, right? Like we're like,
Agreed.
wow, I never even thought about that because you're so used to seeing you and seeing you for who you see you. Right?
Yes,
If that makes
yes,
sense.
agreed.
Compared to, when somebody else gives you that accolade, you're like, man, like that makes me feel all warm and tingly inside, right?
Yeah, agreed, agreed. And unfortunately, as humans, I don't know what it is. We tend to believe an assessment that's negative over one that's positive. A
Mhm.
negative assessment, external validation that we're not good enough is something that we take and it builds roots on us. And
Yeah.
we believe it, we take it to heart. So, somebody saying, "Hey man, you're not gonna make it to the major leagues. You're not gonna
Yeah.
be good enough." Or maybe you should look into networking because you're not gonna be a good programmer and
Mhm.
you believe it and you take it as truth. But if that same person said, "Hey, man, you're destined for glory. You're going to be the next CISO here," hesitation, question it, doubt it. Don't know why human nature gravitates towards the comfort of negativity, which is kind of like, okay, it requires no action, right? You accept it, you stay where you're at.
Mhm.
But the positive aspect means it requires action for you to move towards accomplishing that particular goal. Maybe that's it. Not sure there.
Absolutely. It's like the positive affirmations require work, right? Where
Yes, exactly.
where the negative ones is like, nah, I guess I gotta just keep on doing what I'm doing, right? And it's kind of like keeping you in that mode of comfort. Like I'm comfortable here, so I
100%.
guess I can stay
Yes.
here. But when people put higher expectations on you, depending on your mentality, right? If you have that forward thinking, ambitious mindset compared to just middle of the pack mentality, right? That herd mentality, then it will determine whether or not you receive that and accept it as a challenge, or you look at it as like, no, that's not me. I'd rather stay here among the herd and be okay. What's going on? Listen, I just wanted to take this really quick break to see if you guys are actually enjoying the content that's inside of this show. Because if you are, it will help out the channel a bunch if you go ahead down below, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button if this conversation has truly been fire. But only if it's been fire, though. If it's been some trash, let me know in the comments. Either way, I appreciate the feedback. All right, let's get back into it.
Absolutely. And to think that person isn't being incentivized, they're not being paid to provide that accolade, right?
Mhm.
Or to affirm you in the belief that you are destined for glory, that you can be great, right?
Right.
They have nothing to gain, nothing to lose. You're the only one that has something to gain by acting on someone's belief of you, right? That
Yes.
external belief can be very powerful. I
Absolutely.
wholeheartedly believe that.
100%. So that let's spend some time talking about that inside of your space, right? And now being in leadership roles and honestly being in leadership roles for quite some time now. How is there any um, processes or any best practices that you have to make sure that you're encouraging your team, right, or giving them those accolades, or being intentional about things they are being good at, right? So that they can mostly develop that self confidence. Is that anything that you do inside of your leadership style?
The one thing I try to exercise often, and I can't take the full credit for. I've learned this from Christopher Zell, former CISO, current CISO at Wendy's.
Mm-hmm.
Um, he was a phenomenal leader. I've had a chance to work under him a couple of times. He gets to genuinely know his people, you know. So if you're on vacation because you're on your honeymoon or whatever, and you come back 2 weeks later, it's not, "Hey man, did you have a chance to catch up? Where's the report?" Is like, first off, is how was the honeymoon? How's the family? How's it feel to be married? How's everything going? It's that, he genuinely knows. He will know kids' names, where they're at in school, of his direct reports, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where they're progressing, what's challenging, who's sick, who's financially burdened, who needs to be promoted. That I mean, again, helping somebody through a tough time binds you more and creates a stronger relationship than anything else will, right? Helping somebody in a time of mourning. So again, genuinely knowing your people, genuinely knowing your customers is probably
Mhm.
the best investment you can make beyond a well-written email, a sales pitch, a promotion. I think that's where it's at, right? And
Mhm.
we've seen the memes around, right? People don't quit jobs; they quit their bosses.
Yeah.
Um, it again, not everybody's gonna like you, but if you can at least get them to respect you because you've invested the time, even if there's no reciprocity, if you've done your part to invest the time to know your people, you're going to know what's good for them. You're going to know what they're good at, what they're not good at, right?
Mhm.
When we
Yep.
think superficially and we don't take the time to know people, that's what happens with like in the military. There's an amazing programmer. He developed the program, and the guy just wants to sit down in a corner, drink Mountain Dew all day, be away from people, just developing, writing code. But
Mhm.
all of a sudden, somebody says, "Hey, let's yank you out. Let's have you present to the base commander." And the guy's freaking out, and he's like, "This is not my space," and bombs it. And it's like, wow, can you believe, why did you do this to us? How can you embarrass us in front of the base commander? Like, I never told you it was a presenter. I told you it was a developer, right?
Mhm. Yep.
Getting to know your people prevents those incidents from happening, and you can protect your people and empower your people where they're good because you've taken the time to know where they're good.
Absolutely. It sounds like your mentor is a firm believer in extreme ownership. You ever
Yes,
read that book?
100%. Yes, yes, from Jocko Willings,
Yes, yes. Absolutely
100%.
love that book. I think it sounds like he takes, like I said, extreme ownership over every situation so that he doesn't put his people in positions where they're destined to fail. He always puts them in situations where they can succeed. And then when they don't, he don't just point fingers. It's a aspect of, I'm going to take responsibility and ownership over what I could have controlled and how I could have made the situation better. So I
One
appreciate
hundred
that.
percent. You have to, yeah, yes, sir. 100%. You have to run interference for your people. You have to. You have to shield them. You have to protect them. Yeah, I agree, man. So to me, that's probably the thing I thrive on is sincere relationships, helping your people, being there for your people.
Mhm.
Everything else falls in place.
Absolutely. So let's stay on this topic of people then, my man. Let's talk about how what impact the people of the organization has on a security team, right? Because we talked a little bit about this offline, but we shared how sometimes there's a misconception that the security team is just out to put limitations on the rest of the organization, compared to, no, man, we genuinely just want to keep you protected, right, and keep you safe and keep the company's information safe and your own privacy safe as a user, right? So with that being, the starting point, what would you say are some good tactics to make sure that the rest of the business values and appreciates the cybersecurity team compared to rebelling against them?
Yeah, that's a good question, man. Um, I will say this may be controversial, but a lot of times we
I love it.
forget that for me personally, cybersecurity is a support function. You said, how do we keep, in good with the business? Well, without the business, there is no cybersecurity, right? So
Hmm.
getting to learn that business that you're in is so underrated, right? If you're in retail, right? If you're in healthcare, okay, what is it that we do well? What equates to patient or customer satisfaction,
Hmm.
right? What are the risks associated, not with this box that I'm managing here, this system that I'm overlooking in this spreadsheet, right?
Hmm.
This checklist, but again, what does failure of a system mean, right? Are 10 patients going to go without care today? Right? It's this machine keep producing oxygen to this patient in urgent care and in the ICU going to go down, that sort of thing. Then you can start identifying your real contribution to make a difference, why your job is important. And if you don't take the time to do that and learn about your business, again, you're just a guy behind a keyboard, like you said, making people's lives difficult,
Yep.
right? You don't understand the premise. You don't understand the value you're providing. And if you can't describe the value you're providing, when somebody says, you're in my way, you're a roadblock, you kind of just shake your head and say, yeah, sorry, it's my job. right? Like, okay, you should be able to describe your job, how you are positioning yourself to be an enabler for said business,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because again, I know it's not all about convenience, right? But if it has to happen, how can we make this convenient? There's multiple ways to go about doing something, right? Multi-factor authentication. There's multiple ways to do it, right? I can have somebody carry a brick every day, everywhere they go, right? And crack it open, and inside there's a gem that has a passcode, whatever. Or I could use something like Okta,
Mm-hmm.
sorry, Okta, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So I think that's the most underrated way to get visibility, to get acceptance, to bridge that gap between IT, the business, and security, right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So just to recap, you're saying make sure as a security professional you understand the business first off, right? Understand how that business operates, and then go from there to add value, right? To make sure that things can be convenient and productive for the end users compared to, like you said, just being the guy just clacking away at buttons in the background.
Yeah, it'll just make you better, because even though you may have been granted the authority to say no,
Hmm.
you'll be more hesitant to say no, and you'll look for solutions because you believe in that business, right?
Hmm.
Sometimes I love people that say that company offered me a lot of money, but the culture didn't align with my values, right? Because they know what the business is, and maybe that doesn't line up with their religious, political beliefs or whatever upbringing.
Hmm.
Again, it's so vital. uh, that's how you make friends on the other side, not just when there's a project, when there's a request. You just get to know these people, and you know what's important to them.
Absolutely. It's funny. I listened to a CISO roundtable earlier today, and one of the topics that was brought up was, or suggestions that was made, like, hey, if you're a CISO and the only time the board of directors or the rest of the C suite hears from you is if there's a problem, then you're the problem as the CISO. Like you need to be
100%.
much more involved inside of day-to-day conversations and things that's happening inside the business. What do you say to that? Do you agree, disagree, expand on it?
Oh, I agree. I agree. I mean, the CISO should never be the black sheep, right? Or the guy, the executioner that gets brought in only when something's wrong. He
Mm,
should have as much as a seat at the table, right? They should
mm,
be discussing these opportunities. It's like a mergers and acquisitions, something I did for quite a while when I was over at Lowe's.
mm,
You have a seat at the table as well. Even though ultimately it comes down to legal and real estate and stuff to make a purchase, security is in there to raise a hand and bring things that can ultimately result in a huge investment after purchase, right? Of ways that they need to mature that company they're purchasing, the way they need to align policies, or integration is going to be a mess. So absolutely, I mean, it's almost a no-brainer. As
yep.
as CISO should have a seat at the table along with all the other executives.
So that, and I agree with you 100%. I think it was right on point with what I heard from earlier. But my question to you, and I wish this was kind of expanded on more in that conversation. What advice do you give to the CISO who is treated like the black sheep, right? Like he wants to be a part of these conversations, but he's not really ever invited to those conversations. Do you think, you take it upon, like, what part of ownership does he take to say, like, hey, I think I need to be a part of these combos, or what kind of advice would you give to that person to try to make sure that he is at the table and that his input is actually valued and heard?
Yeah, yeah, interesting. Initially, if you're met with resistance, pushing your way in is probably not going to be the answer. I think the opportunities where you are afforded a seat at the table when that reporting comes, when you're presenting to the audit committee, whenever security is at the forefront to deliver a presentation or a message, you need to be the one to be super intentional and let them know how what your team is doing is impacting their business, whether they're welcoming or not of security efforts. They need to understand that, because a lot of times it's just ignorance, right? Because we
Hmm.
do have that old school mentality that security is here to say no and put a damper on things, and we want to go fast and you want to slow me down. we want to use this niche technology that two guys in a garage put together, but you're asking me to run a third-party risk assessment on them. They don't have a data center kind of thing.
Right.
It's this old school mentality. Security needs to do a better job of educating the business on risk, right? What
Mm-hmm.
is risk acceptance? What is risk avoidance? And needs to really push on the business to identify the risk appetite so that I can either take a seat back or I can start running faster,
Mm-hmm.
right? But it's our job to educate them on what risk is, to get them to inform us of what that risk appetite is, so we can know how aggressively or how passively we play in that particular organization.
Absolutely, Rafi. I think, man, obviously we can sit here and rap all day. I think you're a wealth of information, and I love the energy that you bring towards the conversation in itself, because I can tell you're passionate about it, man. It's important to you. And when it's important to you, that enthusiasm rubs off on the rest of an organization to make sure that those people understand, like, this is important to the business too, right? So I know we're probably going to have a part two at some point, bring you back and have another conversation, a little bit further on as well. But before we sign this thing off, man, let everybody know where they can find you. What's the best way to connect with Rafi, and just let people know where they can get a hold of you.
Yeah, Eddie, this has been an amazing opportunity. Would love to do a part two. LinkedIn is where I'm the most active nowadays, and I'll be
Mm-hmm.
sharing content on cybersecurity, human encouragement. I think the human element is underrated at times. We are people before we are whatever title we've been appointed with. So yeah, find me on LinkedIn, Rafael Nunez. Love to connect with folks. Welcome all walks of life. Uh, it's a great platform to participate in.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm gonna definitely bring it back to talk about exactly what you just said, that human piece of cybersecurity, because I think that'll be very important. So, but again, Rafi, I want to
You
thank you
bet.
again for your time, my man. Thank you guys for all listening. I think this was another incredible episode. I know Rafi was out here dropping gems, so hopefully you're collecting the gold, collecting that wealth. And until next time, I will see you guys on the next one. So, what do you think? Was that helpful? There's incredible conversations just like this one all throughout this channel. The links on the screen, the videos that you'll see, is actually other videos that's very similar to some of the conversations that I had right here with this guest. So feel free to go ahead and binge watch some of these incredible conversations with other cybersecurity leaders within the space. And if you found value, feel free to go ahead and hit that subscribe button down below, as well as hit the like button, because it helps YouTube push this content and this channel to other people in the industry just like you. And obviously, those are the people that I'm trying to reach. So I appreciate you, and look forward to seeing you again on the next one. Deuces.